Ashe, and welcome to another special episode of our Mandatory Mental Liberation Message series, written and produced by our esteemed elder Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, the brilliant founder of Majestic Mind Matters University. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin, for this new episode. The necessity of the Mandatory Mental Liberation series at Majestic Mind Matters University lies in our focus on serving our melanin-rich culture nation. By addressing the importance of knowledge of self to produce greater self-awareness and advocating for our mental liberation, especially for our precious melanin-rich culture children, our messages aim to combat the enduring effects of generational mental enslavement stemming from the historical trauma of the chattel enslavement of the ancestors. Our initiative seeks to empower us to break free from these harmful and unfavorable legacies and cultivate a deep-rooted sense of self-identity and unwavering resilience. Each moment you spend with us is a gift, a chance to grow, to learn, to be inspired. So stay with us till the end, where the real magic happens. Now, let's get started with this very special melanin-rich culture message titled, COINTELPRO, Stay Woke. As we reflect on our past and present, it is crucial to approach our shared history with an understanding that transcends mere awareness. An intention to reclaim and reconstruct our melanin-rich cultural heritage for the liberation of our future generations. COINTELPRO, the covert counterintelligence program instituted by the FBI, was a weapon of oppression directed toward our civil rights leaders and movements, bringing to light the systemic efforts to undermine our unity and strength. Today, we find ourselves grappling with the residual effects of centuries of oppression that have rendered many of us in a sunken place, echoing the representation found in the film, Get Out. This metaphor persists, representing not merely a psychological state, but a broader social condition where our collective consciousness remains subdued by the influences of oppressive systems. We are tasked with the noble duty to awaken ourselves and our precious children to our true identity. Our civilization, indigenous to the land known as Alkebulan, the cradle of humanity, has seen countless epochs of glory and achievement. Yet we are bombarded with narratives that seek to trivialize our accomplishments and erode our cultural significance. To achieve mental liberation, we must ensure that our children are taught the richness of their heritage, including the knowledge of self. This education must stem from our true spiritual traditions rather than the oppressive religions imposed upon us by colonizers. We must shun the legacies of the oppressors that have misled us into internalized racism and self-hatred. Our original spiritualities hold the keys to our historic integrity, allowing us to honor our ancestors who endured immeasurable suffering during the chattel enslavement era. They are the silent figures, unnamed but not forgotten, who lost their lives fighting against the chains of subjugation. It is our duty to memorialize these ancestors, to speak their truth, especially those whose stories are eclipsed by the dominant culture's narrative. The concept of Stockholm Syndrome, where the oppressed develop sympathy for the oppressor, plays a significant role in our continued struggle. We find ourselves negotiating our identities in a society that systematically dehumanizes us, further complicating our mental transformation. The language used to define us, terms such as black, brown, and even people of color, was crafted by the colonizers to maintain divisions within our ranks and perpetuate social discrimination. This nomenclature obscures our shared legacy and hinders our collective power, making it crucial that we reclaim our identities, forming a united front against oppression. In today's context, we understand that racism is more covert, masquerading behind the facade of equality while invisibly undermining our livelihoods and cultural positioning. Discrimination persists globally, manifesting in economic disenfranchisement, educational inequity, and criminalization of our communities. This systemic issue demands our collective action, as we firmly state that we will no longer exchange our valuable votes for empty symbolism or performative gestures. We demand tangible outcomes, such as economic investments in our communities, equitable access to education, and genuine representation in policymaking. The concept of meritorious manumission, where enslaved individuals who performed exceptional acts for their masters were rewarded with freedom, serves as a poignant reminder of the lingering vestiges of oppression. Today, we see a continuation of this phenomenon, We witness individuals within our communities lauded for their compliance or performance in predominantly white spaces, rewarded not with liberation, but with crumbs that reinforce the status quo. The devastation of being stolen from our rightful place in history cannot be understated. Our identity was stripped not just in the physical sense, but also in terms of self-worth and cultural belonging. Reclaiming our melanin-rich heritage involves a profound reconnection with the essence of who we are, people of dignity, strength, and resilience. Woke, originally articulated in African American vernacular English, AV, teaches us to be conscious of societal injustices that abound around us. In standing together, committing to a renaissance of our cultural identity, we may navigate the murky waters of oppression with renewed vigor and solidarity. We must rise, united in our cause, to liberate our minds and spirits from the shackles of colonial and systemic oppression. By embracing our heritage, honoring our ancestors, and educating our children, we are writing a new chapter for our melanin-rich civilization, paving the way for a future grounded in dignity, respect, and an unwavering commitment to self-love. The call is clear. We must stay woke, not just as individuals, but as a collective force striving for the betterment of our entire community. Our next topic in this special Majestic Mind Matters University message series is COINTELPRO, Reclaiming Our Melanin-Rich Cultural Heritage, a Call to Action. We stand at a pivotal moment in our collective history, one that demands an urgent reclamation of our melanin-rich cultural heritage. It is essential that we actively engage in this reclamation not only to foster a sense of identity and belonging for ourselves, but especially for our children, who deserve to inherit a rich tapestry of knowledge about who we are and where we come from. In a world where external forces continue to undermine our society, we must remain vigilant. Programs reminiscent of COINTELPRO could easily resurface, threatening our progress and unity. Thus, it is imperative that we take proactive steps to educate ourselves about our indigenous history, Alkebulan, the birthplace of civilization, by any means necessary. The systemic effects of historical oppression are manifest in our communities. We often feel the pain of being marginalized and pushed into a sunken place, a term popularized by the film Get Out. This metaphor resonates profoundly today, serving as a reminder of how easily we can be rendered voiceless in a society that still seeks to control our narratives. It is time for us to awaken from this trance, to marry within our own race, and reclaim the knowledge of self that our oppressors have sought to erase. We honor our ancestors by reclaiming our original spirituality and recognizing the unbearable traumas inflicted upon our people through the horrors of chattel slavery. As we honor those whose names were lost, we must also remember the countless lives unaccounted for, the ancestors who were unarmed and taken by violent forces representing secret societies and organizations. This is where the importance of education comes into play. By sharing our history with the younger generation, we equip them with tools to recognize the devastating effects of Stockholm Syndrome, the psychological bond with our oppressors that complicates our struggle for liberation. Further, we must educate ourselves on concepts like drapetomania, a term created by slave owners to pathologize the desire for freedom among enslaved individuals. The insidious normalization of these ideologies serves to reinforce the collective trauma we still endure. Our identities have been hijacked by the terms assigned to us, Black, brown, and people of color, language crafted to further divide us. These labels compound our struggles within the modern socio-political landscape, where racism tends to be more covert yet equally debilitating. Discrimination and oppression are not relics of the past. They are pressing issues that affect our melanin-rich people globally. The historical erasure of our culture and contributions perpetuates social discrimination against us. We no longer stand for symbolic gestures in exchange for our votes. Our communities are awakening, recognizing the importance of tangible outcomes that align with our needs and aspirations. For too long, we have been given empty promises, a mere facade replacing genuine commitment. An example of this is the allocation of resources that fail to uplift our communities. We want investments in education, healthcare, and economic opportunities that reflect the spectrum of our lived realities. Our votes must catalyze transformative change. We deserve equity in every sphere of life. Furthermore, the legacy of meritorious manumission, where enslaved individuals could earn their freedom by proving their worthiness, still echoes in modern contexts. Today, the subtle insinuation that we must prove our value within society remains relevant as we navigate systems designed to keep us marginalized. We must resist these notions and instead assert our intrinsic worth as human beings, deserving of justice and equality by virtue of our existence. As we reclaim our identities and heritage, we encounter the painful reality of our collective amnesia, having to navigate a world that forced us to abandon who we are. This loss is devastating, but it is also a call to action. We inspire mental liberation for our precious children by honoring the richness of our cultures and histories. We must not only remember, but also memorialize the unknown names, the disappearing lives, and the unacknowledged legacies of our ancestors. Being woke extends beyond mere awareness. It is an active engagement with our past and present realities. We are called to stand united in our resolve to stay woke, advocating for justice and awareness of social and racial injustices. Our melanin-rich cultural heritage is a treasure trove of wisdom that can lead us toward a liberated future. Thus, we must engage in collective efforts to awaken our communities, fostering a more profound understanding of who we are and where we come from, ensuring that we never forget the lessons of history as we forge ahead together. Our next topic in this special Majestic Mind Matters University message series is COINTELPRO, Collectively Combating Systemic Racism and Reclaiming Our Identity, the Melanin-Rich Culture Perspective. As we look around, the shadows of systemic racism continue to linger in our communities, threatening to suffocate our voices and undermine our existence. We must come together, united in our melanin-rich heritage, to combat these ongoing effects, raising awareness of both historical and contemporary injustices that seek to oppress us. We must stay vigilant, never forgetting how tools akin to COINTELPRO can be wielded against us, attempting again to silence our voices and erase our culture. It's now more crucial than ever to reclaim our heritage, foster unity globally, and ensure our children inherit the strength of our ancestors. The concept of being woke has its roots in African American Vernacular English, AVE, and embodies a state of awareness regarding social and racial injustices. We find ourselves in a sunken place, much like in Jordan Peele's film Get Out, where many of us are trapped in a system designed to alienate us from our true selves. We are told to fit into boxes labeled as Black, Brown, people of color, or African, terms that were coined by colonizers to fragment our identity and further disenfranchise us. However, we must re-educate ourselves, embrace the knowledge of self, and reconnect with Alkebulan, the indigenous name for our motherland, the true birthplace of civilization. This reclamation process is essential for the mental liberation of our precious children. In this journey of reclamation, we must acknowledge the profound psychological scars left by the traumas of chattel enslavement. Many of us carry the weight of a history laden with unspoken pain, including those who were lost to the relentless jaws of history, those whose names remain unknown, whose stories have been erased. We must memorialize our ancestors, not just in our thoughts, but in tangible actions, ensuring that their sacrifice is never in vain. Recognizing these traumas helps us understand the modern manifestations of Stockholm Syndrome, where we find ourselves identifying with our oppressors instead of embracing our rich cultural heritage. The notion of drapetomania, a pseudoscientific term used to pathologize enslaved Africans who longed for freedom, serves as a grim reminder that the psychological warfare against us continues. The fabric of our identity has been torn apart. We have been forced to abandon our original spiritual practices in favor of the oppressor's religions. This disconnection from our ancestry has led to an erosion of community cohesion and strength, making us more susceptible to the covert racism that we face today. We must recognize and resist this fragmentation, reclaiming the narratives that define our existence. Our melanin-rich culture has faced a long history of systemic oppression, and the exploitative strategies employed by those in power have left us yearning for more than empty symbolism. We, the descendants of a proud heritage, are demanding tangible resources. The time for promises without action is over. We seek reparations and investments in our communities. An example of this can be seen in grassroots movements that emphasize economic empowerment, educational opportunities, and equitable access to healthcare. We refuse to be placated for our votes without reciprocation, insisting instead on policies that uplift our communities. Meritorious manumission, the idea that enslaved individuals could earn their freedom through exemplary behavior, still reverberates today. The lingering belief that we must prove our worth to a society that has historically marginalized us continues to affect how we engage with the world around us. We must reject this ideology and recognize our inherent value, built not upon meritocratic standards set by a flawed system, but on our collective history, strength, and resilience. As we strive for liberation and recognition of our full humanity, we must embrace our ancestry, moving beyond the veil of imposed identities. Let us honor our original spirituality and unite as a people to reclaim our destinies. Each conversation we initiate, every platform we utilize, and all our collective actions must echo the voices of our ancestors, promoting awareness regarding systemic racism and oppression within our communities. It is our duty to honor their legacy by ensuring that our children understand their rich heritage and the strength that comes from standing together. We must remain vigilant and active in our quest for justice. There is power in knowing our history and being aware of the present. We have the capacity to challenge and change the narrative, dismantling systemic racism and oppression one informed action at a time. Together, as a unified global community, we can foster a future that honors our rich heritage and secures mental liberation for generations to come. It must be done, and it must be done now by any means necessary. The conclusion in this special Majestic Mind Matters University message series is COINTELPRO, Redefining Our Identity, Our Journey Towards Mental Liberation. In our collective journey toward understanding and redefining our identity as a melanin-rich people, we find ourselves at a critical juncture. The labels imposed by colonizers, words like Black, brown, and people of color, are not merely descriptors. They are tools for division and reinforcement of systems of oppression. To embark upon the path of mental liberation and healing from the enduring trauma of chattel enslavement, we must reclaim our identity, embracing our heritage and the rich history that precedes colonization. We, as a unified community, must understand that the journey to self-discovery is not one taken alone. Internal unity and solidarity are crucial in this process. For far too long, we have been fractured by the narratives constructed around us. These labels, imposed with malice, have obscured our true essence, our identity rooted in the rich civilization of Alkebulan, Africa, the very cradle of humanity. To comprehend our strength, we must delve into our treasured legacies and histories, for they are the keys to unlocking our true potential. In this quest for unity, we can draw parallels with the notion of the sunken place, as portrayed in Jordan Peele's film Get Out. The sunken place symbolizes the deep-seated psychological trauma and disconnection many of us experience, a result of systemic oppression that seeks to render us voiceless. It is imperative that we remain vigilant, aware of the historical conditioning that echoes through our communities today. The legacy of programs like COINTELPRO serves as a stark reminder of the lengths to which oppressive forces will go to undermine our unity. This is why we must remain woke, to question, challenge, and build solidarity against any attempt to divide us. To fortify our identity, we must embrace our rich cultural heritage and honor our ancestors. We recognize that our history is not simply one of trauma, but also of resilience, strength, and profound wisdom. We owe it to our precious children to reclaim this legacy for their mental liberation. This reclamation cannot come from acceptance of diluted versions of our spirituality found in colonizer-led religions. Embracing our original spiritual practices, guided by the wisdom of our ancestors, will empower us to rise above the traumatic legacy of chattel enslavement. We must memorialize the countless unnamed and unrecognized ancestors who suffered and perished, along with those who have gone missing, as their stories are crucial to our collective memory. We cannot ignore the psychological effects of historical injustices, such as Stockholm Syndrome, which manifests as misplaced allegiance with the oppressor. Our struggle for identity has been further complicated by the concept of drapetomania, the historical term used to pathologize the desire for freedom among enslaved people. These constructs reflected a deliberate attempt to distort our understanding of self, resulting in generations grappling with identity crises and internalized oppression. The social constructs aimed at marginalizing us are ever-present, yet increasingly covert. Racism today is embedded in policy, education, and social interactions, perpetuating a cycle of discrimination that adversely affects us globally. Empty symbols and gestures of support will no longer suffice. Our communities are demanding tangible change, not mere tokenism. We have witnessed too many instances where our participation in political processes yielded only hollow promises, while the systemic barriers remain intact. Our fight is not merely for representation, it is for equity and justice that can be measured by the conditions of our communities. Furthermore, the legacy of meritorious manumission, where certain enslaved individuals were granted freedom as a reward for loyalty to their owners, remains evident today. This practice instilled a mentality that pitted us against one another, perpetuating conditional acceptance and enshrining a social hierarchy based on compliance. In reclaiming our identity, it is paramount that we understand these historical dynamics and reject any remnants that encourage division among us. As we work toward healing from the trauma of our past, embracing our identity as a melanin-rich civilization must be an immediate priority. We have the power to transform our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. By being vigilant against oppressive systems designed to keep us divided, honoring our ancestral legacy, and cultivating internal unity, we can guide our children towards a future anchored in identity, strength, and cultural pride. We must reclaim our narrative and remember that our liberation is interlinked, a collective journey towards awakening and self-discovery for the generations to come. Stay woke. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin. We trust that this very special message has expanded your understanding through the insights shared by our highly esteemed producer, Elder Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Matters University, in our Mandatory Mental Liberation Series special message. Remember this, it is essential to honor the ancestors. We have a unique connection to the ancestors. They endured many unwarranted struggles, preserved our melanin-rich culture, and passed down invaluable wisdom through many generations. By honoring the ancestors, we pay honorable tribute to our roots and draw great strength and much-needed inspiration from the unwavering resilience and royal legacy that has paved the way for our present and future generations. Ancestral reverence is a powerful way for us to continually uphold our own melanin-rich identity, heritage, and cultural legacy. Here is an ancient Alkebulan proverb to keep in mind. If you think you are too small to make a difference, you have not spent the night with a mosquito. Remember this as well, whenever you are in the presence of anyone, saying, "They don't see color," it actually means, "They don't see you." We acknowledge and honor the indigenous name of our glorious continent as Alkebulan. This name means Mother of Mankind in various Alkebulan languages such as Akuyu, Swahili, and Kemet, referring to ancient Egypt and rejecting the terms Africa or African. As royal members of our melanin-rich culture nation, we must strive for knowledge of self for greater personal awareness. Always treat yourself kindly and seek to live a totally awesome and gloriously fulfilling melanin-rich culture life. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. So, like, subscribe to stay updated, and share this very special melanin-rich culture link with everyone that you care about and that really cares about you and all of yours as well, and thank you for listening to this enchanting special message. Stay woke. Ashe.